Klonoa was a series that I never got to experience growing up. I remember seeing in the stores, but I had other games already on my mind. When I was around 8, I saw the PS1 game in a game store, that's a UK shop in case anyone doesn't know, and I vaguely remember thinking the character looked cool and even the gameplay looked right up my street. But since I was limited to what my parents would get me, I usually had a game picked out already, so I never played either of the Klonoa games. I didn't know anyone who played them either. It wasn't until the internet that I saw people calling it a gem, a platformer PS1 classic alongside Crash Bandicoot, Spyro and Rayman. But perhaps not mainstream enough, just like my boy Croc. Now with the remastered version, I can finally try these classic games. I never got to experience this series, so all I can say is... Oh yeah, this is a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era game alright. Both games basically function the same, with some slightly new mechanics in the second game. So what are these games all about? Klonoa is known as a dream traveler, it's what they call him in the second game, and I guess he goes around helping people with their dreams? At least that's kinda what I got from this. I mean, I honestly still feel like I don't know enough about Klonoa himself. Not sure if I missed it, but I don't think it was ever mentioned where he comes from. I assume he lives in another world that isn't a dream? Or does he? There's a lot of mystery around this character and honestly doesn't get explained. He just goes around and saves dreams, I guess. Okay, sure, I mean a game doesn't always have to have a super deep story. Although speaking of deep, both games really want you to feel. Getting attached to these characters and be sad to see it all end. Can I say the ending of the first game, it got me. I wasn't expecting a game to make me feel sad at the age of 30, but here we are. Klonoa, you got me. I'll go over the two stories for a bit. The first game, Klonoa is having a nightmare. When he wakes up, he hears a disturbance sounding like someone has crashed a bell tower. So Klonoa and his friend Hupao go to investigate. They find out it's Diva Lefis, a girl who sings to heal the world, had been attacked by the villain Gadius, who wants revenge on the world for locking him away. So he kidnaps Diva and eventually steals the pendant of the Moon Kingdom, said to be the Kingdom of Legend, so he can turn the dream world into a nightmare. I get Big Knight's vibe with Klonoa, especially the designs of certain bosses. I mean, even Gadius himself reminds me of Nightmare. As you journey forth, you meet a bunch of characters, which didn't really leave an impression on me, since you don't spend much time with them, outside of Klonoa and Hupao's relationship. There's a lot of cutscenes in both games, so I appreciate that you can either fast forward or straight up skip. Joker, Gadius' right hand man, will be constantly getting in your way, sending out creatures to fight you. I guess it's in the name, but I didn't take this guy seriously at all. Until I did. He went from, yeah, this guy's supposed to mess up, to just, I killed your grandpa with a motherfucking laser. Christ, this went dark really quick. Gadius successfully uses the Moon Pendant on the Temple of the Suns to reveal the Moon Kingdom, and this is where the truth slowly starts to reveal itself. Hupao knew all along about the Moon Kingdom because it's where he belongs. He's actually the prince, but you notice that there's more to it than that. Gadius keeps talking about a strange dream and that he wants to erase it. With the combined power of Klonoa and Hupao, you defeat the nightmare that Gadius summoned and save Phantomile. This is where it started to hit me. Hupao reveals to Klonoa that the strange dream is him. He doesn't belong in this world, and he never had. Hupao states he gave fake memories, I guess, in order for Klonoa to care to help. I'm a bit confused by this. Why didn't you just ask him? Did you really need to manipulate him? Klonoa is having none of it and does not want to believe him or leave the world. Both of them crying as Hupao desperately wants him to stay after all, but it's too late and he returns to his world. Yeah, so the ending did get to me a bit. Sure, it was a bit shady what Hupao did, But he had good intentions, and Klonoa, whether his feelings were real or not, he cared for him. And the beginning of the game, Klonoa does mention that he has dreams, but he always forgets, except one, and I guess that was your hint that he was just, well, sleeping, I suppose. I mean, kind of figured that anyway, but he generally believed he belonged in that world, which makes it really sad. The second game, however, Klonoa seems to be fully aware that he's in another dream world, and that he has been summoned to help. He actually looks a bit older here as well. I'm not sure if it's me or not though. Klonoa 2 seems to be all about emotions, feelings, and how even sad feelings is part of life. He gets summoned after hearing a voice asking for help. The two new helpers of the world, Lolo and Popka, discover Klonoa. However, the Sky Pirate Liarina also discovers him and is interested in the ring he has. You learn from the priestess that there are 4 bells of the world of Lunatea, and the 5th bell has been discovered. If it gets awakened, the world would be consumed by darkness. Lolo, a priestess in training, now a fully fledged priestess, must travel to the 4 kingdoms with Klonoa and ring each bell in order to get the elements and contain the 5th one. The prophet known as Baguji serves as your guide on where to go. All the while Liarina and her strange cat puppet thing that can split into 2 gets in your way. Okay, what is this? Like really, same with Popka, like I have no idea what these two actually are, like I'm so confused. Turns out Liarina was a priestess who wants revenge for not being worthy for saving the world, I guess, and wants to do it her way by unleashing the 5th bell and using the element's power to save them. Lolo relates to this as she didn't become a priestess of her own means, like everybody else, and starts to doubt whether she deserves to be one since she keeps failing all the time. Liarina fails however and she gets consumed, so Klonoa has to take her down. Only for the 5th kingdom to actually be revealed, known as the Kingdom of Sorrow. If the king isn't stopped, then the world will be consumed by sorrow. The King of Sorrow reveals they have been led astray the entire time. He was Baguji all along. Apart from that one time Liarina totally tricked us into thinking she was him, of course. He wants the world to wake up and stop ignoring their sorrow. Turns out the king was the person crying for help right at the beginning of the game, so it was him who summoned Klonoa. After defeating him, Klonoa tells the king that he won't be alone anymore, and that people will remember and that there is a place for him. So the poor bastard was just lonely, I guess, rejected and just didn't feel like he belonged. It's kinda sad. With Lunatea saved, Klonoa's job is done. We get a touching scene where Lolo thanks Klonoa for telling her it's okay to cry. So she cries, bless her, because he's leaving and she'd grown attached to him on their journey. It didn't hit me like it did the first game, but it was still a touching scene. And that's basically the story of the Klonoa games. They definitely have a lot of charm, and I really do think the character designs and worlds really help with that. Now to finally get into the main event, the gameplay. Klonoa is pretty much the same between both games, with 2 adding some new things. You know it's a platformer sequel when they add some gimmicks, and Klonoa 2 loves the board in this game. Klonoa is a simple platformer. You'll mostly follow a pathway with occasional pathways intertwined in the first game, and the second game you get around using cannons. Klonoa has a default running speed, he can jump and hover if you hold the button down. He can grab enemies using the power of the ring, either throw enemies as projectiles to hit other targets or use them as a double jump. And if you're really good, as long as there's an enemy in the air you can grab, you can keep jumping. The game starts out fairly easy, but by the end, they definitely test your skills. Especially the second game, my god. Constant bottomless pits where you got to do some crazy shenanigans to get through? The enemy designs give me a Kirby vibe to them, and I mean Kirby is also a side-scrolling adventure. They do find creative ways to use enemies in both games, bringing some puzzle elements. It's more apparent in the second game. They will have you throwing things in certain ways, and even throwing them and picking them up again to do other things like the bombs. The collectibles in the game are the Dreamstones. They act like most platformer MacGuffins, where you can get 100 and you get an extra life. There's also these eggs that can reveal goodies, which sometimes you'll have to throw enemies off into the distance, since even though it is a side-scrolling platformer, Klonoa can technically move in all directions. You can save people from nightmares and there's 6 in each level, but I don't really know if they do anything. If someone knows, please tell me in the comments. You have a 3 heart system, and when they're all gone, you lose a life. I chose normal mode, which means you take some damage and your grab range is shorter, but I'm curious if there's a hard mode. You have standard springs that launch you up, and there's objects you can grab onto in Klonoa 2 that launch you up into the air in various ways. The level structure in the first game is reminiscent of Sonic 2 actually, where you have 2 acts for that level with a boss fight at the end. Whereas the second game is more of a level to level type of thing, which sometimes you do actually revisit, but in different ways. I actually quite enjoyed the boss you just beat here, actually not dead, starts chasing you while the town is on fire. It definitely made the backtracking more interesting. Klonoa 1 has branching pathways which can lead to goodies, whereas Klonoa 2 actually has you explore more to sometimes find a key to unlock a door. Most of the boss fights have you run around this ring waiting for an opportunity to throw an enemy at their weak point. I like how in the first game, Joker just tells you by warning the boss that they should be careful of their own weaknesses. I never felt like they were hard though. I did fumble here because I was too dumb to realize what I had to do. And if you fail even once, the game just straight up tells you. As you would expect by the fact you are in a dream, you get some interesting and quirky boss designs. This is what I find interesting and fun about dreams. You're only limited to your imagination. Anything goes, which means you have a lot of creative freedom. These games do look great, though if you're wondering if the PS1 game looks more like a remake, it's actually because it's a port of the Wii remake, which is why the models look better. The levels are very colourful, just like the characters. Of course, we gotta mention the Wahoo, which is probably iconic amongst Klonoa fans. And honestly, I really enjoyed myself, despite being really bad at the first game, but I redeemed myself with the second game. Would I recommend these remasters? Absolutely. As someone who hasn't played them before, they get my approval. I'm happy that yet another classic platformer has made a return. Heck, even Pac-Man World is getting a remake, which is a pleasant surprise to me. There's only one left. Still waiting for someone to remaster my boy Croc. Maybe someday.